What's going on, guys? Today we're looking at a little preview of Countdown to Craziness, and I've got my dad here with me, and we're gonna just talk about some things that we are looking forward to with Countdown. 'Cause it's always a fun time. It starts off the Duke season, and it's the official kickoff before the official kickoff, if you will. And I think this year, you know, with a lot, with all the expectations, I think with this team, with Cooper Flagg, with Kama Maluak and Tyrese Proctor and Caleb Foster. There's a lot of fun things to look forward to, and I mean, I guess I'll leave it with this. What's the thing you're most looking forward to here?
It's clearly the one season that we'll get of Cooper Flag. It reminds me of the one season we get of Zion. So it's the expectations have been as high as other great Duke players. So that's probably the most fun about this season.
Yeah, and I'm sure you didn't catch this, but when they were doing Duke Media Day a couple of days ago, and Kaman was talking about how when he decided to commit to Duke, I guess he was talking with maybe his brother or one of his family members, and he told them like, "I'm going to Duke," and they were like, "Oh, like what's that? Where's that?" And he said, "Oh, the school that Zion went to." And then as soon as he said that, his family member was like, "Oh, I know where that is." And it's just the Zion effect.
It really is crazy how many Duke players now are in the NBA. It's almost like you always will point out to me, oh, you may want to watch this team because it has one of your favorites. Now, one of my favorites go back a long way since I saw my first Duke game in 1978 when they were in the Final Four in St. Louis. And it was just it's been a love affair ever since. So couldn't be happier to be with you for this season where I think John Shire in his third year put together a hell of a roster.
I agree. I agree. This is, I think, clearly his most talented team in, as you said, his third season. And it has a nice mix of veteran players, freshmen, I guess two returners, and then, guys who can do, a variety of different things. Whether, like a guy like Sion James is somebody who I'm excited to see in this game. He had a lot of people were talking about him over the summer, and you really just don't know until you can kind of see them. And this isn't going to really prove anything one way or the other, but I think it'll just be fun to get to look at them on the court together in a game-like environment.
Well, I think that the composition of this team, John Shire has learned from prior 2 years that in this era of the transfer portal that he had to go take advantage. And I know you know far more about this than I do, but there are five transfers, I think.
Four.
Okay.
Four. Yeah. You've got Malik Brown, who I believe was the first.
Right from Syracuse.
Yep. Then Mason Gillis. Where did he play?
Purdue.
Yeah. There you go. Nice. And then Sion James, I just mentioned. I know you won't. Nobody knew where he played at. I didn't know he was even a player until Duke got him. He was at Tulane. And then the last one is, I have my notes here, Cameron Sheffield from Rice, which is kind of interesting to me because Duke has had a couple of guys transfer in from Rice in the past, like Sean Obi. He didn't play very much, but he did transfer from Rice, and I think something similar could happen with Sheffield, where the reports at least were he's going to be like a practice guy. But he is, he had some decent numbers at Rice the year before. Didn't play last season. He missed the whole year, so he'll have 2 years of eligibility, which is nice.
So I know why I think there's five and you think there's four, because there's the ever-present Neil Bagovich. Begovic from Stanford.
Well,
How could you forget him?
it's his second year, so he doesn't count. He's already been here.
Oh, he's already a Dookie. That's
Yeah,
fair.
yeah.
That's fair. But wait. As long as we're talking about the team, is it really possible that Spencer Hubbard is back?
I believe Spencer Hubbard and Stanley Borden are the only two guys left in the Duke program. Well, I shouldn't say the program. Only players left who were there with Coach K.
Well,
No.
so,
Spencer Hubbard was not. Maybe he was. I could have that
but
wrong.
he's a fan favorite.
Certainly a fan favorite, yeah.
And so when they talk about only being able to return Caleb Foster and Tyrese Proctor, I think we shouldn't leave Spencer Hubbard off the list. He gets those quality 15, seconds, the final minute, and fans are, this is craziness. We're excited. So, Spencer Hubbard's going to get some love when he comes out.
He certainly will, and I'm glad you mentioned him because that reminded me. One of the things that Tyrese Proctor was talking about media day was he was saying how him and Caleb Foster have kind of been teaching guys about the Duke way, but he also mentioned Spencer Hubbard, and it reassured me that he was part of the last Coach K team because he said Hubbard was a part of the Final Four team with Paolo and them, and so has that experience that he can share with the other guys. And he also mentioned Mason Gillis is a guy with, obviously he played in the finals with Purdue last season as a guy with experience getting deep in the tournament that can help share that with some of the rest of the roster. So yeah, Spencer Hubbard, certainly fan favorite. Always love. Listen, if Spencer Hubbard's in the game, it's been a good day. I think we can say that.
We could definitely say that. And we're always cheering for him to put up a shot or two at the end there. That would be fun. Do you have an early sense of, I've been looking, and I think there's some question as to who the starting five is going to be. What do you think?
Yeah, so, I covered this in a couple of previous videos here on the channel. Go check that out. We've got Duke basketball rotation and the Duke 2024-25 preview video as well. I think the starting lineup goes like this. So, actually, I want to say this. Here's what I thought it was, and here's what I think it is now since those videos. I've talked with some people in the comments. Maybe I've changed my mind, but this is what I had originally. Proctor, Foster, Sion James, Cooper Flagg, and Malik Brown. That's what I was thinking originally. Now, I want to make an amendment. I think the starting lineup is actually going to be Proctor, Foster, Cooper Flagg, Malik Brown, and Kama Malawak. I think he has come around. Seeing him in the Nike, the Hoop Summit in Oregon, I thought he looked very raw. Didn't think he'd be ready at the start of the season. I told you, he could end up being like Lively and Mark Williams, but I think it's going to take time. Then watched him with South Sudan. I was like, he looks better than he did in that game at the Nike Hoop Summit. And so my thought is that he's been improving kind of rapidly, and he'll be ready to start game one. And I've changed my mind.
Well, and I think they'll give him minutes, even as the starter, to get him ready, and maybe pull him after, maybe he's not getting 30 minutes, he'll be getting 15 to 20 minutes, but they're going to get him pretty accustomed to being out there to start a game so that when they get to league play, they'll feel like this guy is ready to go.
I agree because similar to, 2 seasons ago when nobody was a bigger fan of Ryan Young than you were. But I kept... I know. Nobody's a bigger fan. And he was really good. I really loved having Ryan Young as part of the program. But the one thing I said to you 2 years ago was as good as Ryan Young was for the team, especially early on when the team really struggled, for the team to reach its ceiling, Derek Lively needed to start and play a lot of minutes.
Absolutely.
And he certainly came along as the year went on and became, I would say, the best player on the team despite averaging, 5 points a game. And I think something similar is the case this year, where maybe I thought Malik Brown should start the year at center, but regardless, no matter where I was in the beginning, by league play, as you said, Kamal Malawak, for this team to reach its ceiling, he's the starter. He's the guy playing 25 minutes a game for this Duke team.
Well, and if he could even hark back to people like Mark Williams and Derek Lively, paired with Cooper Flagg's ability to play defense, the expectations, I can't be more excited. I wish I was at Duke for, the beginning of, the madness, but I couldn't be more excited about this year.
I agree. Those two guys, plus Malik Brown, who led the ACC in steals last season, you have a front court that is just going to be a nightmare to play against. I wouldn't want to play against those guys. And
I don't think we can play against those guys.
Yeah, we may have ran out of eligibility. That's a good point. Also, we're not quite tall enough. There's a few things working against us. But yeah, I mean, if I was, a conference opponent, there used to be like the Shaq flu, where centers would be like, I can't play today. Something happened with my knee. There might be some big men who decide, this was the game that my ankle flared up beforehand or something, because it's going to be tough sledding going against that front court.
If he can take off at center, and imagine you get by, it's just like Williams and Lively. You get by Flag and you're like thrilled. And then there's this other guy there to just say, no, not going to happen.
Yeah. And by the way, even if you get by Flag, he's still coming back. I don't know if he's
that picture of him blocking the guy from behind at one of the scrimmages was just great.
Yeah. And I think the other thing about the defense and the team in general, just to touch on quickly here, is no one is shorter, at least listed height, than 6'5". And Caleb Foster made a joke on the podcast that allegedly he's the shortest guy on the team. And he didn't feel great about that, but he's still, I think, maybe he's 6'4". But to just to that point, defensively, getting into the paint, I think, is going to be difficult. And once you get there, good luck. So I think that's where I think this team certainly is going to hang their hat, is on the defensive end of the court. And the one thing since Coach Shire has taken over this program that's been consistent is defense. Even last year with the team that I thought the roster wasn't necessarily the best, most suited to play really good defense, they kind of figured out how to play good defense with a team where Kyle Filipowski was playing center, and everyone knew he's really a forward, but they still figured out how to have a really good defense with that lineup, and not only with Filipowski at center, but three guards. And that's what makes this year so exciting, is the pieces fit much better defensively.
So if the defensive expectations of this year's team are as high as we think they are, then what do you think has to happen on offense? I mean, they could be winning with 60, 70 points. Maybe they get to 80, but how do you see the offense flowing?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the big question for me is, how does Coach Shire balance the defense with getting enough shooting into the team? Because I think their three best shooters arguably are going to be freshmen plus Mason Gillis. And I don't think any of them, maybe Mason Gillis ends up starting, but I don't think any of them as of right now are going to start. So how does he balance Mason Gillis, Isaiah Evans, Con Knuppel, and Darren Harris? Really, Con Knuppel, Darren Harris, Mason Gillis, I think, are the three best shooters on the team. And figuring out how do you get those guys in, because we've seen with Coach Shire's teams in the past 2 years, the best shooter hasn't always found their way on the court consistently, right? Last year, I would say, well, I guess Jared McCain was certainly the best shooter, so I take that back. But the second best shooter was TJ Power. And he couldn't find consistent minutes because
No.
it seemed like Coach Shire didn't trust him. And I think the same thing could be said the year prior with Jaden Shutt, where he was a great shooter, but when you put him out on the court, it didn't, the defense wasn't quite there. And so I wonder if these guys can defend at least at a level where Shire feels comfortable with them. Like Darren Harris in a recent practice, a lot of you guys probably saw, was 8 for 8 from 3. And
Wow.
yeah, and it's not like he's practicing against nobody. Like the guys on this Duke team are, as we've talked about, really good defenders. So and I know both of us, when we watched him, I think it was like Peach Jam, late high school season for Paul VI, watching Darren Harris, we're impressed. I was very impressed. I was like, this is the lowest ranked guy of the recruiting class. He looks really good. And so, but I just kept saying to myself, how does he find minutes? And I think that's his ticket, the 3-point shooting.
I was trying to remember, Jack, there is one of the big NBA pros that is giving Darren Harris huge shout-outs and love.
Oh, Paolo. I think it was Paolo.
It was Paolo.
Yeah, I remember that.
He loves him.
I mean, if you shoot the ball like that, it's going to be really hard for him not to play. And that's the thing that I think is a great problem for Coach Shire to have. And what's most intriguing about this team is how does the rotation end up? Because, yeah, we talked about the starters. Typically, Duke teams play 8 guys, maybe, sometimes 7, right? So I think this year's talent and the depth of the team could warrant, not a platoon system, but like thinking back to those, that Kentucky team in 2014, they did run a platoon. I don't think Coach Shire would do that just because Cooper Flack, like you don't want to platoon Cooper Flack. You want him out there 35 minutes. But, maybe he does go to 9 deep with this year's team, opposed to last year was 7, really 6 after Foster's injury. So, I do think that's something that I'm going to be intrigued by as we get into that. We won't see much. Maybe we can see a little bit in the exhibition games, what the minutes are going to look like. But that first game against Maine, I think we'll start to get a sense of how he's going to, deploy the players here.
Well, I'm also looking forward to Tyrese Proctor. In that Elite Eight game, he didn't really show up for us. And I know that's going to weigh on him. He's a hell of a competitor. He's going to be one of the leaders of this team. So I'm expecting Tyrese he's either going to step up or, to your point, he's not going to get into that circle of trust. Yeah,
well, I think he's in the circle of trust.
He is right now.
Because think about it. He's been with Coach Shire. He's the only player who's going to get minutes who's been with Coach Shire since he became the head coach. So I think, and he's a point guard. So typically those two things mean you're going to get a lot of minutes. But to your point, this is a big year for Proctor. And then I think Caleb Foster. I'm really excited about Caleb Foster. And the thing that I love the most about Caleb Foster is he has this ability, which I think is kind of unteachable, where he can score off the dribble in kind of like weird feel type shots in between, like mid-range, close range area. And he's got like a floater, like a little touch push shot. And it just kind of like, however, he likes to play off contact, I think is the best way to put it. And I'm just really curious how this team's going to shake out, if he'll have the ball in his hands more, because the one thing that we both said towards the end of last season before he got hurt was when he was the point guard and bringing the ball up, the team just seemed a lot more like settled and comfortable and confident when he wasn't even doing much. He was just bringing the ball up, getting the offense initiated. And that's something that I'm excited about with this year's team, with having both Foster and Proctor. But the one thing I think that's important to mention is both those guys had injuries last season.
Right.
and those are the only two point guards on the roster, and so I think their health is pivotal.
So they'll start them together, or
That's my thought, but if Coach Shire wants to get closer to the platoon system, maybe Foster comes off the bench and he leads the second unit.
good thing to look for.
Yeah.
And so the only thing we really haven't mentioned is the true sixth man, and that's what Friday night is all about. The fans.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
We've been there. We know what it's like.
Yeah, I think as a fan, we've never been to a Countdown for Craziness, but that's got to be a fun experience to go to. You get to see all the guys come out to their song. Some guys are more into it than others. Certainly last year, Jared McCain, that was a big moment for him. He loves dancing and all that stuff. Tyrese Proctor, not much of a dancer. I think he would, if he could avoid it, he would. But that, listen, I'm in the same boat as Tyrese Proctor. I would avoid it too. So I think that's the one cool thing about this is you get to see a little bit of each guy's personality.
It's going to be great. Looking forward to it.
Very excited. And with that, I'm Jack.
I'm JD.
And this was Talking Ball. We'll see you guys after Countdown Craziness.